What's up, everybody, and welcome to another set review video, this time covering the new set Duskmourn, set to be released later this month in September of 2024. We are covering all of the colors. This is the fourth video, at least in order of I've recorded them. We've covered white so far, we've covered black so far, we've covered blue so far. Now we're jumping into red. And we're going to go through each of the commons, the uncommons, the rares, and the mythics in ascending CMC order. We're going to talk whether or not I think they're good in draft, whether or not they're better in constructed, maybe commander. And I'll even rate some of them. But most importantly, we're going to have fun along the way. We're going to talk about the art. I love the 80s horror themes and the tropes and all of that stuff. We're talking about our fears. So if we run into one of your fears, make sure to timestamp it and leave a comment. We'd love to chat with you about those. Even talked about some of my deep fears. We had a good conversation about my fear of the dark in one of these videos that I just did. So without further ado, though, let's go ahead and jump into the first card on our list. We're going to start with the commons. At 1 CMC, or for 1 red, we have Clockwork Percussionist. It is a 1/1 artifact creature monkey toy with haste. When Clockwork Percussionist dies, exile the top card of your library. You may play it until the end of your next turn. I definitely think this is a grab and draft. It's a 1/1 for 1 red and has haste, so you can put it down and swing with it right away. It's going to help with your curve. Plus, it gives you another card that you can essentially play. So the only downside of that is if you put this on turn 1 and you, well, I guess it's when it dies. So if it dies, it does give you that ability. So if it stays out there, great. But if it dies, you then have the ability to take a card off the top of your library, and I can play it to the end of your next turn. So I would think this is a definite grab for draft. We're going to see this as well in some of the, unfortunately, like, I want to say like a storm deck, but not really a storm deck. But it's going to be like a red aggressive deck where they're trying to see cards as fast as they can. So we could potentially see this in constructed. But if you're in red, you need a 1-drop. I think this is a above average 1-drop and something for you to take as well. Something else to point out for like Delirium, where you want 4 creature or 4 card types. This is also an artifact, so that can help with your card type approach for Delirium. So next one up is Turn Inside Out. Now this is one of those creepy arts. The eyes being pointed in 2 separate directions really freaks me out. Not to mention all of the teeth in the open chest thing going on here. It really kind of creeps me out if I'm telling the truth. So it is a 1 red instant. Target creature gets +3/+0 until end of turn. When it dies this turn, manifest dread. So this is a great little combat trick. You could throw it down, kill another card, and then let your card die, and then you could manifest dread. And since this is the first time we ran into Manifest Dread in our red set, what Manifest Dread is you can look at the top 2 cards of your library, put 1 onto the battlefield face down. It is a 2/2 creature, and the other into your graveyard. Turn it face up at any time for its mana cost if it's a creature card. Also worth noting, there's a token. There's a Manifest Dread token. So I'll be on the search for that token in my IRL drafts. It's always fun to collect the tokens and be able to actually have those. But you just put it over the top of the card so that you know it is a 2/2 Manifest Dread. So overall, would I take this? Yes. Nice little combat trick, plus gives you a card for 2/2. I think this is above average value for sure. So nice little combat trick if you're in red. Get an exchange and get some cards out of it. Next up is Grab the Prize. 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 red sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card. Ouch. Draw 2 cards. If the discarded card wasn't a land card, Grab the Prize deals 2 damage to each opponent. So any of the each opponent type cards I think is always fun in like a commander deck, right? Because now I'm pinging 3 other people for 2 life. So you're dealing 6 damage out there. That's a pretty good value for 2 mana. So definitely consider it for a commander. Discard a card to draw 2 cards for 2, and then maybe do some damage. I wouldn't say this is a snatch grab in draft. I think it's interesting. We could potentially see some constructed play out of it, and definitely some commander play. So as far as like grading it or rating it, I would say it's probably an average card. It balances itself out with having to discard a card. So it's not too overpowered. It's not too underpowered either. Yep, here's another creepy one. Don't like anything that's going on in that art. The mouth with the teeth. We've realized I've had some phobias over this series. So if you're catching this series in order, I went white, blue, black, and now we're in red. We're just following the circle around the back of the magic card, and we're doing that in that order. One of the fears we covered is there's that fear of a bunch of little holes, well, or a bunch of little like nodules together. So like all the little nodules together on the hand, all the teeth in the mouth. Like we're realizing we have phobias. So that's something we're dealing with over here. Hand That Feeds is a 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 red, 2/2. So baseline, at least we have an average value card, a 2/2 for 2. Like awesome. But it has Delirium. So Delirium, first time we've ran into it in the red set. So let's talk about what Delirium is. And that's whenever the Hand That Feeds attacks while there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. So that's Delirium, is 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. It gets +2/+0 and gains Menace until end of turn. So if you have 4 card types in your graveyard, this thing is swinging as a 4/2 with Menace. Now, if you can reliably get Delirium in draft, and I'm starting to think you can, because there's a lot more enchantments in this set than there was in Bloomburrow. So you're reliably getting enchantments, you're reliably getting a creature, you're reliably getting an instant and a sorcery. So you, I think, can reliably build Delirium decks in limited formats. So I would think this would be a decent grab, especially if you're at Delirium. A 4/2 with Menace for 2. Can't be too upset about that. So if you're building a Delirium deck, yes. If it's just looking at it for value, a 2/2 for 2. If you need a 2-slot body, maybe grabbing it. So we're definitely going to see it grabbed in limited formats. In constructed, I think there's going to be some really interesting decks going to be built. There's going to be enchantment decks. There's going to be Delirium decks. There's going to be Manifest Dread decks. And obviously in those, you're going to be looking for your outsized value cards. And I think this would fit into that, into those type of constructed decks as well. Ooh, we got the old Annie doll thing going on here. But we have Ragged Playmate is, yeah, see, Raggedy Ann, Ragged Playmate. And then we had Annie, the doll, the cursed doll. Yeah, see, it all feeds together. They're just, it's all fed into one another. So anyways, Ragged Playmate. It's a 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 red for 2/2. So 2 mana, 2/2 already. We got a standard, like pretty average body. It's good. It's an artifact creature, so it gives us 2 types. It's helping us with Delirium. And then it's tap or pay 1 tap. Target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. So we saw that there were some really interesting cards in black that if they were able to hit the player, it could do some really interesting stuff to the player or to their board state. So having the ability to make things unblockable, to tag the player for damage, I think is going to be a really interesting mechanic. So overall, I think this is an above average card. Definitely could see it being drafted, especially in a Delirium deck. It's giving you 2 types, and it's a 2/2 for 2. So definitely a draftable card, and we're probably going to see it in Delirium decks, is constructed decks as well. Up next is Scorching Dragonfire. It's a 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 red instant. Scorching Dragonfire deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If that creature or planeswalker would die this turn, exile instead. Solid removal. Definitely would draft it as a removal. 2 mana for 3 damage. Can target creatures or planeswalkers. Like across the board, we're going to see it in a bunch of constructed red, burn decks. We're going to see it in draft for sure. Maybe we'll see it in Commander. We have a lot of removal cards in Commander as well. So overall, I would say above average. right? 3 damage for 2. Yeah. And it's an exile, so it doesn't go to the graveyard. Definitely above average. Quick removal snap for me if I'm looking for a removal slot. This art's pretty cool. I like how they did this like shifted ghost thing. It's pretty cool. I don't know if it necessarily reminds me of any like 80s movie tropes, but it's definitely pretty cool. I like the image. So this card is Rampaging Soul Rager. It's a 3 CMC, 2 colorless, 1 red. It's a creature spirit for 1/4. So a little below average as that goes. But Rampaging Soul Rager gets +3/+0 as long as there are 2 or more unlocked doors among rooms you control. So if you combine this with a rooms like metagame or sub game to what you're trying to do, a 3 mana 4/4, pretty solid. So if you have a rooms strategy in your red deck, potentially draft it. I think we're going to see a lot of rooms in draft, because there's quite a few at the different rarity levels. We see them in common, we see them in uncommon, rare. I don't think I've seen any in mythic, maybe. But that being said, if you can reliably pull a few rooms, then this would synergize well. Outside of that, I mean, a 3 mana 1/4, it's got a big ass, so it's gonna be a decent defensive card. Like if there's not a better choice, like I would probably snag this in red, just because the potential to grab some rooms or unlock some rooms, or just have a nice little blocker on the table, but nothing I'd be super excited to grab if I have to grab it. Next up is Vicious Clown. Good old Chucky, the inspiration right there. It's a 3 CMC, 2 colorless, 1 red, 2/3 creature human clown. It's a human clown. It's like a doll. It looks more like a doll than a human clown, but it is what it is. Whenever another creature you control with power 2 or less enters, Vicious Clown gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So we've already seen that like white-red is going to be sort of an aggro, like go wide deck. So it doesn't say anything about needing to be a non-token creature or a token creature. So this means as you're generating tokens, this would also give it +2/+0. So now it starts to become a 4/3 for 3, which is a above average value. So if you have a synergy for bringing in creatures with power 2 or less, so going wide, this will definitely work well in those decks. In a bubble, I would say slightly below average card. If you can build synergies around it, so this would obviously work well in some constructed synergy decks, as well as if you've got a decent little synergy going on in your draft, you could potentially feather this in as well. Next up, Most Valuable Slayer. So I like that all of these like human characters, or a lot of these human characters, have these like modified hockey sticks. Maybe it's the same person. That's why we keep seeing this dude with this modified hockey stick. So maybe it is. So Most Valuable Slayer, 4 CMC, 3 colorless, 1 red for a 2/4. It's a little undervalued from there. Let's see what it gets. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. I think this is still below average. It's not enough to outweigh the... I mean, you could build some synergies with it. It's okay. It's just expensive. If this was like, 4 mana, 2/4, +1/+0, gains first strike and like a life link, or first strike and +1/+1, maybe a little bit better. But as it stands, it's maybe a little underpowered. It's not going to be a quick snatch for me. Again, this is going to depend too on how the format pans out. I think this format, based on what I'm seeing, is going to be a little slower, at least on the mana curve. There was a lot of really strong 1 and 2 drops in Bloomburrow, and then you had some synergistic 3 drops, and then some like end game 4 and 5 drops, right? This, it seems everything's shifted by like 1 CMC. So I think most of the really good stuff's going to be at 2 and 3 drops, and then your 4 drops are going to be sort of your synergistic cards, and then your 5 drops and 6 drops and maybe even up to 7 drops are going to be more of your like game finishers and bombs in the set. That's just my early prediction on how this is going to play out. But this may work in as like a synergistic card, but it's a little underpowered for its cost. Rip Chain, Razorkin, 4 CMC, 3 colorless, 1 red. It's a 5/3, so I'd say it's average value. But now we add reach, and the 5/3, that's snagging birds, right? That's snagging things right out of the air. We like to see it. Plus, it also has an additional capability here. 3 CMC, 2 colorless, 1 red. Sacrifice a land, draw a card. So if you really need card draw, you can generate that. But I think the 5/3 with reach is going to be huge. That tends to be the scariest thing in draft is cards with evasion of some sort. And to be fair, I haven't seen a ton of flying in this set. Mostly it's like giving a card unblockable. So maybe it's a little less valuable than I think. In a bubble, I think it's good. Compared to the set, I think having some flying protection is nice, but it might not be as relevant as it was in Bloomburrow. Ooh, I like the art on this one. The creepy light source behind you, smoky room, and clearly a severed head in hand. We have the Boiler Bilges Ripper, 5 CMC, 4 colorless, 1 red, for 4/4. When the Boiler Bilges Ripper enters, you may sacrifice another creature or enchantment. When you do, Boiler Bilges Ripper deals 2 damage to any target. So I don't think this is a quick snatch. Sacking one of your own things to do 2 damage to something else, it's a little underwhelming. So I'd say this is a below average. Don't think we're going to see much of this in Constructed. And I think we're going to struggle to see this in limited formats as well. So just all in all, I don't think this is going to be scooped up very much. Next up is the Impossible Inferno, 5 CMC, 4 colorless, 1 red instant. It does 6 damage to target creature, but also has Delirium. So if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, exile the top card of your library. You may play it until the end of your next turn. So we saw a similar card in Bloomburrow. It was like do 6 damage to something and then do 2 damage to something like a token. And I believe that was also like 5 or 6 mana. And, it's a snatch it up if there's nothing better. And you have an open removal slot. I think you'll fairly reliably get to 5 mana, and being able to do 6 damage to something is always really nice. But then also getting some bonus card draw. I would say it's probably going to get drafted, but it's not going to be like an instant snatch. And then I think for Constructed, it's just too expensive. Next up is Bedhead Beastie. It's a weird, like Clifford the dog with too many legs, but also humanoid. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. I don't know what's going on there. But Bedhead Beastie is a 6 CMC, 4 colorless, 2 red, 5/6. Okay, so pretty close. With Menace and Mountain Cycling. Again, this is something that you're probably going to see in like a Living End type deck. Any of these cycling type cards that you're like, hey, I just want to get it out and get it into my graveyard to do something with it. You might also see it with like a Delirium deck just to get a creature in there, or some sort of recursion deck where like I want to get stuff into the graveyard to play out of the graveyard. And then that's when this becomes really nice. But a 6 CMC, 5/6 with Menace, I would say just in a bubble by itself, it's probably like average to slightly above average. The Menace is really beneficial, I think. But yeah, those graveyard recursion decks, I think, are going to be where it's most valuable. Because it looks like a dog. It does. It kind of looks like a dog. It's like kind of like Clifford, but mutated. And also like a dragon tail. I just see these like scales, like these scales on the tail. I don't know what's going on, but it's slightly above average, and could definitely see some play in some of the older formats for sure. And I think it would be hard to draft. I think at 6, it's a little expensive unless you have graveyard recursion. And now we've encountered our first room of red. We have Glassworks and Shattered Yards. So Glassworks is a 3 CMC, 2 colorless, 1 red. When you unlock this door, this room deals 4 damage to target creature and opponent controls. So 3 mana for 4 damage, I would say above average. It's pretty good. And then Shattered Yard, 5 CMC, 4 colorless, 1 red. At the beginning of your end step, this room deals 1 damage to each opponent. So this card, I think, would be fun in Commander, 100%. We're going to see this in Commander. Should you draft it? Maybe. I think it's decent removal. 3 mana for 4 damage. Plus gives you an enchantment on the board. So if you're looking for enchantment synergies, this definitely helps you get there. The 5 mana on the Shattered Yard is, I think, a little expensive. That's why I say Commander would enjoy it, because now it just starts doing 1 damage to each opponent. Constructed, meh. I think it's 50-50 that's going to show up in Constructed. Oh, we got another room. And another. What about another? We got the Ticket Booth and Tunnel of Hate, the old creepy roller coaster trope. So for Ticket Booth, we have 3 CMC, 2 colorless, 1 red. When you unlock this door, manifest dread. So 3 mana for a 2/2 manifest dread. Meh. I mean, it is an enchantment generator, but let's see what the other side does. Tunnel of Hate is a 6 CMC, 4 colorless, 2 red. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature gains double strike until end of a turn. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature gains. So it's not a single one. Oh, wait, maybe it is. It's just target attacking creature. It's not multiple. I think it's too expensive. I think it would be like, it might be okay. Like I said, anything in that 1 to 3 CMC for getting an enchantment room down, I think is going to play into a sort of enchantment / room deck that you might build. So it's always potential. I think the other side of that is just a little too expensive. But again, there's a bunch of cards that will just unlock doors. And if you run into one of those, then, then it becomes of value. Okay. Next up, I think that completes our commons, as we have the rares. So I'm going to clear my voice and grab a drink of water real quick. 1 second. Who would have knew talking for 4 hours straight, it would beat up your voice? But here we are. Moving into the uncommons. Again, we are going to go from the lowest cost CMC to the most expensive CMC in this rarity level, starting with Norrin, Swift Survivalist. 1 CMC as 1 red is a 2/1. It's a legendary creature, human coward. Norrin, Swift Survivalist can't block. And whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may exile it. You may pay that card or play that card from exile this turn. So whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may exile it. So this might be a good way if you have ETB triggers that you're trying to go and you're just going to start swinging your guy. Start swinging them, and they either block them, and then you choose to exile it, and then you can play it again, or they don't block it, and they're taking the damage, right? So there's been some really interesting evasion strategies in this set so far. So in Bloomburrow, it was really like flying and indestructible was really your evasion. There was some menace, right? They're touched on a lot of them, but like the primary ones were flying, indestructible, and that was pretty much it. And then there was like a couple rats that would be like unblockable, and then there was some that had menace, and then that was about it. In this, there seems to be a lot of more cards, and a focus on evasion is going to be like just make a card unblockable. There is menace. I've seen quite a few menace. Or give it an effect like this. It's like, oh, if you block it, I get to exile it and play it again. So you're like making people make a decision like whether or not I should block it and let it die. Like if I let it die, it's going to do something, or I just have to take the damage. So there's been some really interesting, like, you have to make decisions of whether or not you let the damage through. Otherwise, it's going to do something, and I may or may not like the thing that it's going to do. So that's more of the evasion strategy that we're seeing taken with this set. So where would I rate this card? 1 mana for a 2/1, but it can't block. I would say it's slightly above average, maybe like a C+, B- territory, just because of this ETB effect that you can roll through by just having that on the board. Plus, it's a body just to swing 2/1, so not terrible, just slightly above average. This is some Saw shit if I've ever seen it. Trial of Agony. Yeah, look at the eyeball watching. Yeah, this is definitely inspired by Saw. And there's literally a saw in the middle of the room. So here we are. Trial of Agony, 1 CMC for 1 red, is a sorcery. Choose 2 target creatures controlled by the same opponent. That player chooses one of those creatures. Trial of Agony deals 5 damage to that creature, and the other can't block this turn. I would say, yeah, take it. That's a removal spell and an evasion spell. That's what I mean. Like, they do really interesting things to give you evasion. This would be an above average. Definitely draft it. And then I don't know if we're going to see it in constructed. I like the art in this one. Violent Urge. Violent Urge is a 1 CMC for 1 red. It's an instant. Target creature gets +1 and +0 and gains first strike until end of turn. It also has a delirium effect, so if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, that creature gains double strike until end of turn. So if you have delirium, you're going to give this +1, +0, and double strike. If not, it still has first strike. It's a nice little combat trick for 1. I would like to see it maybe have something like also lifelink on there to make it really worth it. So I'd say slightly above average. It's an okay combat trick. Not something I'd be really chomping at the bit to draft. And then, like I said, because of that, I don't think we're going to see much constructed play with it. Betrayer's Bargain. 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 red, an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature or enchantment, or pay 2 additional. So this could be upwards of 3 colorless and a red. Betrayer's Bargain deals 5 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. So we talked about this in a previous set or color. If you're generating tokens, which is really common in red-white, then that's fine. Sack a token, do 5 damage to something. Also, there are some rooms where you're just like not gonna unlock the other side. And if that's the case, then you've got the ETB trigger from like the other side. You might just sack it. So you basically have a useless room just sitting there unless you unlock the other side, but it's just so damn expensive that you're just like, whatever. So there are some sacrifice material on the board, or you could pay 4 to do 5 damage. So overall, I would say a decent removal, maybe something to grab, but it's not like the best removal in the limited formats. And I think because of that, we're going to see it struggle and constructed. So we've seen Gremlins mentioned a couple times, but this is, I think, the first like blatant art of it. But this is obviously from like the movie Gremlins, right? The little cute little things during the day. And then it's like if you feed them after midnight or if they get wet or something, they turn into these mischievous gremlins and cause a bunch of trouble. It was a great 80s movie. But 2 for 2 with Menace. Already above average card. We like it. You gotta block with 2 cards. And then whenever another creature you control with power 2 or less enters, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Do this only once each turn. So it gives you a little card recursion. Allows you to clean out your hand if you need to. So overall above average, and it's on curve. So I would snatch it in draft. And because of that, we'll probably see some limited play out of it too. It's just a decent value card. Or we're definitely going to see it in limited. May see it in constructed as well. Piggy Bank. I don't know what this one's based off from, but it's creepy. I don't like the teeth in the belly. Creeping me out. Piggy Bank. 2 CMC. 1 colorless, 1 red. It's an artifact creature, so great for delirium. And it's a 3/2. So above average, a power and toughness ratio to CMC. And then when Piggy Bank dies, create a treasure token, and you get a treasure token. I definitely think this is well over average value. Probably we're in that B plus, A minus tier. We're getting a lot of value out of this card. We're getting a creature token. We have a 3/2 body on the board. So we're taking out things that are 3/3, 4/3, even 5/3 cards as a blocker. And then if it dies, we have a artifact creature in the graveyard for Delirium, and we get a treasure token. I'm not upset about this card at all. Play this on curve. This is definitely a draftable card, a high draftable card, lots of value. And we'll probably even see it in constructed because of that, especially in the Delirium decks that people are going to try to make. Next up, Pyroclasm. 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 red. Sorcery, Pyroclasm deals 2 damage to each creature. Each creature. Snatch. Fast snatch. Just great removal. I love it. It does every creature for 2 damage. We're gonna see this in constructed play. I think this is a reprint, right? Yeah, this is a reprint. Yeah, just look here. Duh, this is a reprint. So love Pyroclasm. It's making it. I don't know if it's been in standard. It's been a while since it's been in standard. Maybe Masters 25, 2017. Yeah. I don't know. This is a great card. This has been a historically great removal, especially on a go wide board. I definitely take Pyroclasm as a removal spell if given the option. So next up is Untimely Malfunction. It's a 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 red instant. Choose 1, destroy target artifact. Change the target spell or ability with a single target. 1 or 2 target creatures can't block this turn. Again, remember, creative ways for evasion. So we're seeing can't block. So the red deck so far has been given a lot of things the inability to block. So it gives your creatures the ability to get through. Also like the change the target spell. So if somebody tries to hit you with a destroy target or some negative effect, you can just slam this, change it around, put it on their own card. And then destroy target artifact. We don't have a ton of artifacts in here, but the ability to destroy artifact. I think this is well above average card. So we're talking that B plus A minus territory. So I would definitely say it's a snatch in limited formats, and we're probably going to see it in constructed because of that. Fear of being hunted. That is a crazy fear. Just like thinking you might be being hunted, somebody's following you. Yeah. So if you're scared of being hunted, drop that comment below. That's an interesting one. I don't know if I've ever felt that, like being hunted. I've definitely felt where there's like somebody watching me, or like I'm in the woods at night or near the edge of the woods at night and I feel like I'm being watched. Like I've had that. I don't know if that was fear of being hunted, but I'm like, what's watching me? That was the curious thing. So this is a 3 CMC for 4/2. So it's like already at average value here. It has haste, so now we're at above average. So that's going to put us B minus territory. And then fear of being hunted must be blocked if able. So this is something where, again, creative evasion. So say they have 1 blocker. You need a card to get through. So you're going to play this and swing with it, and they have to block it. This could also be removal for you. So it's a 3/3, a 4/3, or wait, this is a 4/2. So it could be, a 4/4, a 5/4, 6/4, something like that. They have to block it, and they're going to take the damage. So creative evasion, also going to help with Delirium. It's an enchantment creature. So this is well above average value. Again, that B plus A minus territory. I definitely think it's a snag, especially if you have a Delirium deck, or if you have a deck that you're trying to get cards in and do player damage, then this is going to help you get there. But all in all, it's still on curve. It's a 3 mana 4/2. It's gonna block well outside of its weight class. So I would definitely snag this card in a limited format. And I think because of the same reasons, you're going to see it in constructed. This art, I really like this art. This is crazy psychedelic art thing going on here. The next one up here is Vengeful Possession. It's a 3 CMC, 2 colorless, 1 red. Sorcery. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap it. It gains haste until end of turn. You may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. I think this is a game swinger for sure. You could snag one of their big guys or somebody that does something crazy. So maybe they have a card that is do damage to a player and it does some spicy stuff. And you could snag that. It's a game swinger, and it allows you to do some card cycling to see if you can get something better. This is I would say this is a situational grab and limited for sure. Depending on the synergies that you might have, if you need a sorcery card to help with delirium or something like that, maybe a snag. I think the value is slightly above average for the value. So you're not wrong in taking it. It's just situational for sure. Next up, Diversion Specialist. 4 CMC, 3 colorless, 1 red, 4/3. So a little underpowered, but it has Menace, I think, which bumps it back up to like already C+ territory, maybe B-. And then sacrifice another creature or enchantment. Exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. So this is going to just give you some of that card recursion that you need, access to more cards. You're going to see more cards. Slightly above average. You know, this is a potential grab. It's a little bit more on the expensive side, but based on what I'm seeing, like I said, I think everything's shifted by sort of 1 CMC for your primary cards being 1 or 2 to being 2 or 3, with then your situational, your support cards in that 4 and 5 slot, or synergistic cards, I think was the term I was using. And then you have your game closers in that like 5 and 6 and 7 slot. So this may work out okay as a synergistic card if you're trying to see more cards. It's not a quick snatch in a bubble by itself. It's an average card if you can build some synergies slightly above average. Next up is Infernal Phantom. 4 CMC, 3 colorless, 1 red, 2/3. Already kind of below average. Let's see what it does though. It does have Eerie, so whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, Infernal Phantom gets +2 and +0 until end of turn. When Infernal Phantom dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. It's okay. It's going to work in an enchantment deck, because if you're playing an enchantment every turn, this is now a 4/3. Even at a 4/3, it's still below average. Then the fact that you can do 4 damage to any target if it dies, like, you know, the only thing that you can guarantee is that it's going to be a 2/3. So you're going to do 2 damage to something else if it dies, which means it's still punching the thing it's punching for 4. Because say it gets blocked and it dies, then you're able to do that 2 damage to the thing, doing 2 additional damage and potentially killing it. Like, I think it's just slightly below average. It wouldn't be an immediate grab. It does some interesting things. If I don't have a better option, I might snag that in limited. Other than that, I don't think we're going to see it much in constructed. All right. Into a room. Nice cheap room, by the way. Painter Studio for 3 CMC, and we have Defaced Gallery for 2 CMC. So nice cheap enchantment to get on the board. Let's see what it does. So for the Painter's Studio, which was 3 CMC, 2 colorless, 1 red, when you unlock this door, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play them until the end of your next turn. So this is what I'm talking about. So being able to play an enchantment that doesn't do anything else afterwards might be good sacrifice material for some cards. And then the Defaced Gallery is a 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 red, is whenever you attack, attacking creature you control gets +1/+0 until the end of the turn. So it's on the cheaper side. It's going to play well into the go wide decks. So if you have a nice go wide deck or you need cheap enchantments, I would say this is a good synergistic card to put in there. In a bubble, I think it's a little undervalued, but with good synergy, it could be an overvalued deck or a card. Next up, we have Razorkin Horde Caller. It's a 5 CMC 4/4 haste, and whenever you attack, create a 1/1 red gremlin creature token. Let's check out look at that. It's 100% the movie Gremlins. It's hilarious. I think that exact scene was in there. They like shine the flashlight into their face. So 4/4 with haste is probably makes it an average value card. But then whenever you attack, you get a 1/1. So it doesn't say whenever this card attacks. It's just whenever you attack. Create a 1/1 red gremlin creature token. So it's generating tokens. I would say this is above average value and a good 5-drop. Really good synergy deck. It's going to allow you to go wide. But again, that would need to be your strategy. Like I said, we're looking at that 4 and 5. Or wait, like 2 and 3 is going to be sort of where your curve is at. 4 and 5 are going to be where your synergistic cards are at. And then 5, 6, and 7 are probably going to be your game closer. So this is on the expensive side of a synergistic deck or synergistic card. So if you have the synergy, grab it in limited. Outside of that, I think it's going to work well in some constructed decks. So we're probably going to see it there. Lastly, in the uncommon slot, we have Fear of Burning Alive, a 6 CMC 4/4 enchantment creature. So it's helping two types in the graveyard for us here. Is when Fear of Burning Alive enters, it deals 4 damage to each opponent. Great commander card. Just boom, here's 4 damage. But also, just dropping it on the board, they're taking 4 damage. And then it has Delirium. So whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, Fear of Burning Alive deals that amount of damage to target creature that player's controls. So this is saying is if you play this card, deal 4 damage to your opponent, and you have Delirium, then you can then deal 4 damage to one of their cards. So you would play this after you have Delirium, and you can do 4 damage to them, 4 damage to one of their creatures, and then drop a 4/4. So it is a ton of value as a card. It's just so expensive. I think it would be hard to draft. We're in that 6 slot, so those are going to be your like game enders. Is this a game-ending strength? No, I think it's going to be hard to draft. And because of the expense, it's going to be hard and constructed as well. So I like the card. It does some really interesting things. I just think it's going to be really hard to play. Awesome. We have finished the uncommons. So next up is our rares. We only have 7 rares in red this time. And I think we had 8 in the last couple colors. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. In the first slot, the cheapest rare is 2 CMC. It's called Chainsaw. 1 colorless, 1 red. It's an artifact equipment. When Chainsaw enters, it deals 3 damage to up to 1 target creature. Whenever 1 or more creatures die, put a rev counter on Chainsaw. So I'm gonna need like rev counters now. Equipped creature gets +X+O, where X is the number of rev counters on Chainsaw. So really interesting. This could get spicy. I definitely could see a place for it in Commander. And, you know, lots of creatures are dying. This thing is getting big and spicy, especially on an enchantment deck or aura deck. You're just looking ways to like make your guy all crazy and buffed up. So this could definitely go there. I think it's going to be okay in limited. At rare, you're barely ever going to see it. And then it just basically you're playing it just for the 3 damage, and then you might get some value out of the rev counters, but I think it's just going to take too long and be too expensive just in the long run. But it is a 2 mana 3, like I don't know, 2 mana 3 damage. So it's essentially removal, and then it gives you some extra stuff to do. If there's not a better card that fits your synergies, grab it. Grab it as a removal. And only think about it as a removal that might do extra stuff for you. That's where I'm at with that. Could you see it working in Constructed? Definitely. And definitely in Commander. Fear of missing out, the old FOMO. So we've ran into another point blank fear. If you have the fear of missing out, drop it in the comment. We're about 44 minutes and 58 seconds or so into the recording. Drop the timestamp. Let me know if you have FOMO, and if so, what do you have FOMO about? I'm a big what is it? It's called nighttime procrastination, or no, revenge procrastination, which is a form of FOMO. Basically, like I just rev up and get more and more energetic into the evening because I don't want to go to bed, and I want to continue to enjoy the day and to do more and more and more in the day because I'm afraid of missing the opportunity to do more in that day. So that's my fear of missing out. As far as like socially, I don't have that too much anymore. When I was younger, it was definitely like college is like, oh, there's a party? I gotta go. Oh, you guys are going out? Yeah, let's go. I want to go. Like, hey, you guys do anything? I want to go. Let me go. Because I just always wanted to be part of what was going on. Like I wanted to see the story that people were talking about the next day unfold. Like I always wanted to be a part of that. But for me nowadays, it's mostly that revenge bedtime procrastination because I just like fear missing out on opportunity to get more done in a given day. So let's talk about the card. 2 CMC for 2/3, so above average value. 1 colorless, 1 red. Enchantment creature, so helps with delirium. When fear of missing out enters, discard a card, then draw a card. So we got some card cycling in our hand. It also has delirium, so that's great. Whenever fear of missing out attacks for the first time each turn, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, untap target creature. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. So you get to attack twice with this card. Because you could just target this card, untap it, and attack again. Great value card. Great in Delirium deck. So if you're drafting a Delirium deck, I would definitely snag this if this is an option. And then if it dies, it's helping you achieve Delirium if you don't already have it. So I would say above average. If you're focusing on Delirium, this will fit well. There might be better cards, but it's above average for sure. Razorkin Needlehead is 2 CMC, so 2 red, 2/2, creature, human, assassin. Razorkin Needlehead has first strike during your turn. Whenever an opponent draws a card, Razorkin Needle damage deals 1 damage to them. That's pretty good. I think we do that in Commander 100%, maybe in Constructed. I think it'd be a little harder in Draft. Again, it's rare. Like, is it worth it at rare? Is there better cards that are going to fit your synergy better? Like, I'm not sure. But it's a 2-mana 2/2 with first strike when it's your turn. So it's above average. And plus, every time they draw a card, it does 1 damage to them. If there's not something that like fits really solidly in your synergy or your draft strategy, I would snake this. Cursed Recording. Up next is a 4 CMC, 2 colorless, 2 red. It's an artifact. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a time counter on Cursed Recording. Then if there are 7 or more time counters on it, remove those counters and it deals 20 damage to you. When you next cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell, and you may choose a new target for the copy. What? It deals 20 damage to the... Interesting. I don't know. They've made a few cards where I'm like, it's scarier to you than it is anything else. But I guess if you are in like I was going to say if you're in like a storm deck, maybe. I don't know. I wouldn't draft this. Maybe if you're in like a I guess if you have to drop it on turn 4. So say you get 7 more turns. But it's not even that. It's every time you cast an instant sorcery. So if you have a spell-based deck, it's put a time counter on it. I guess maybe if you put made yourself like invulnerable to damage, and then like purposely went over 7, took the damage, and then the timer start back up. I don't know. This card's scary. I think they purposely did this. There's like cards that are just scary to play. Like, why would you play this? Like, I'm gonna kill myself for sure. I don't know. I don't know where that one stands. That one just gonna fall in its own category of like scary card. Stay away. Next up is Enduring Courage. It's a 4 CMC, 2 colorless, 2 red enchantment creature. Helps with delirium. 3/3. And it's a dog glimmer. And whenever another creature you control enters, it gets +2 and gains haste until end of turn. When Enduring Courage dies, if it has was a creature, return to the battlefield. So we've seen this before in the other colors. This is an enchantment creature. If it dies, it comes back as just an enchantment and still gives the effect of whenever another creature you control enters, it gets +2 and +0 and gains haste. I think this is above average value, especially if you're going wide. Now all of your creatures have haste and +2, so your little 1/1s are now 3/1s and just swinging as soon as they're being generated. So this is definitely an above average. I would snag it, especially if you're in a go wide deck with lots of tokens. Here we have Leyline of Residence. It's a 4 mana or 4 CMC. 2 colorless, 2 red enchantment. With all ley lines, if you have it in your opening hand, you may begin with it on the battlefield. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only a single creature you control, copy that spell. You may choose a new target. So this is going to be great for Spellslinger decks. We're going to see it in Constructed 100%. I don't think it's going to be good in Limited. It's just it's going to be hard to find so much synergy with it. And then like guaranteeing it's in your starting hand, or then it's like a really expensive 4-drop. And there's a lot of enchantment removal in this set, so I definitely don't think it's going to be drafted. And in the last spot of our rare color is for 5 CMC. We have Waltz of Rage. It's a sorcery, and target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature. Until end of turn, whenever a creature you control dies, exile the top card of your library. You may play it until the end of your next turn. So basically, say you have a 5/5 and it's the most powerful card on the deck. I could say, okay, cool, target this creature. It's going to do 5 damage to every other creature. It's going to kill everything. And then say it kills 5 of my stuff. I can then exile the top card of whenever a creature you control dies, exile a top card. So I would exile 5 cards off the top of my library and I could play them until next turn. Would I draft it? Probably not. I think building a board state is really important in draft. But maybe. I think there's a place for it in Constructed, for sure. And even in Commander, 100% in Commander. If you have the biggest creature and you want to kill everything else on the board and then have access to a bunch of cards, like absolutely. See this in Commander. I think we're going to struggle in Limited, maybe see it in Constructed. Awesome. That leaves us 1 rarity left. We have 5 more cards to go through in red. And first up is Screaming Nemesis at 3 CMC. It's a 3/3 with haste, so over value or above average value. And then whenever Screaming Nemesis is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any other target. If a player is dealt damage this way, they can't gain life for the rest of the game. Rest of the game. So even if it's out off the board. So would I draft it? Maybe. In a bubble, 3/3 for 3 with haste. It's a good value card. If there's other cards that fit better for my synergy, and like the deck strategy that I'm building, I would snag those over this. In Constructed, I could definitely see this doing some crazy stuff, especially in like an enchantment deck, where maybe we could do this in a Limited as well. It's like there's a bunch of auras that you could do in a red-white, slap this on it, make it nice and big, block every time, take damage, do damage. So you can make it work if you have the right synergies. But it's going to be kind of hard to make work, but I think it could work really well in Constructed. Next up, is the Roller Coaster Ride. It is 4 CMC. It's pay X and 2 colorless and 1 red. And it's a legendary enchantment with Delirium. If a source you control would deal non-combat damage to a permanent or player, while there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, it deals double that damage instead. When the Roller Crusher Ride enters, it deals X damage to each of up to X target creatures. So it triggers itself and does double that damage. So if I paid 2 for X and 2 colorless and 2 red, so that's 5, I would be able to then do 4 damage up to 4 creatures. Kind of crazy. Would I draft it? Potentially. I would definitely take a 1 of. Can this do some crazy stuff in Constructed? Absolutely. Is it going to do some crazy stuff in Commander? Absolutely. So I'd say above average card, has a lot of purposes, maybe a 1 of in Limited, just to do something crazy. And here we go. We have another one of these. So we talked about Enduring Courage in our rares, and here we are finding a mythic version in a different print. So we have a holographic print, and then we have a standard sort of like full art print of this Enduring Courage that is at the mythic level. I don't know if they've done this in the past before at Wizards of the Coast. I just think this is really interesting. I think that rarity is set by the power level and the availability of that card. It shouldn't be by like the print, but that's my opinion. I don't know. I don't have enough history with like studying this game. That maybe they've done this in the past. Maybe this is common thing to do. But for me, I think it seems a little weird. Next up is Overlord of the Boiler Bilges. That's a mouthful. At 6 CMC for a 5/5, and has an impending 4, where it's 2 colorless and 2 red. This is the first time we've talked about impending in the red set. And impending means if you cast this spell for its impending cost, it enters with 4 time counters, and it isn't a creature until the last is removed. At the beginning of your end step, remove a time counter from it. So it's just going to enter as an enchantment and sit there for 4 turns until it then converts to a creature and it becomes a 5/5. Whenever Overlord of the Boiler Bilges enters or attacks, it deals 4 damage to any target. So basically, you're doing 4 target damage for 4, and then it sits there until it becomes a creature. Or you can pay 6. Would I draft it? Probably. 4 damage for 4 is average, but then it has a potential to become a 5/5. Body on the board? Meh. Could you see it in Constructed? Potentially. Same thing in Commander. You may or may not see it. And now we have come to the final card in our red series here. We have an expensive enchantment room. We have Charred, Foyer. How, are we going to put some French on it? Foyer. It's a Charred Foyer. Is a 4 CMC, 3 colorless, 1 red. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. So a nice little extra card availability. You're going to see more cards. On the other side of that, we have Warped Space. It's 4. It's 6 CMC, 4 colorless, 2 red. Once each turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost of a spell you cast from your exile. There's obviously opportunities for this in Constructed and in Commander. I think it's a little too expensive for draft or limited formats, because I said those 1 to 3 rooms are really nice spot because they can be fodder for enchantment decks for like, I just need an enchantment count. They can be sacrificial material, and then usually you can try to find something that will unlock a room, really expensive side of it later. This is just expensive and expensive, so it would be kind of hard for me to draft. And it's really spell oriented too, so we might see it in Constructed. Probably see it in Commander, but overall, I think a little undervalue just because it is so expensive. So with that, we have finished our set review for the Red Lands Mountains Red in Duskmourn. We covered the commons, the uncommons, the rares, and the mythics, covering every single card and talking about whether or not we think they will be good in limited or constructed or in Commander. And this is my first set review. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We talked about some fears. If you ran into a fear, go find that timestamp or just drop one below, because these cards are creepy. We love them. They're all about those 80s scary movie tropes. I'm really enjoying the theme of this deck and what's going on with this deck. We've seen some really interesting avoidance or evasion techniques in this. So it's either like fear evasion, like I don't want to block this card because if it dies, it's going to do a bunch of stuff I don't want it to do. But if it hits me, it's going to do stuff I don't want it to do. Then there's like make a card unblockable, or like force you to block another card so that this card can get through. So the evasion is really interesting. We saw it really kind of come to life in the red series. And so this is the fourth color that we have covered in our series so far. So we've covered white, we covered blue, we covered black, and we just finished red. Up next is we're going to cover green, but we're going to cover every single color. Coming up next, as I said, is green. Then we're going to have colorless and then multicolor. And then we'll do a short little video on the new lands and some things that we'll see there. So if you like all things Magic, enjoyed this set review, hit that like, hit that subscribe button, follow me. You can go to my website at halfpump.com. You can follow me there on my Twitch, my Twitter, my Instagram, and my YouTube, where I am currently on a path to pro for Magic the Gathering. I have been playing this game since the 90s, but haven't taken it seriously until the last year or so. So I have become a student of the game, and you get to watch a guy try to live out his dream and become a pro Magic the Gathering player. So as we close out everything, until next time, we'll catch you at the table.